All right, folks, welcome back. Another back-to-back Thursday nights, 7 p.m. Me and my good friend Billy Ferguson jumping back on here. We promised everyone, and I think I told you, Billy, that we weren't allowed to get together for bad news and then to talk about bad things happening. We had to wait for something positive. So that's not why we're here. We had a significant fire on the West Coast out in L.A. It's in our news now, and it's been very, very significant. So as we start off, I just want to send all my thoughts, prayers to everybody out there that's affected by the fires, and just 100% of positive vibes to all the responders and everyone that's affected and working through this. But that's what we're here for again tonight, folks. Billy's going to. Again, you got 40 years of experience. I get to pick his brain, and we get to talk about a little bit of old times and some of our times together, man. But I'm excited about your insight on this, from leadership, from preparation, response, leadership, aftermath. Right, because right now there's a lot of negative noise that's coming around their preparedness and operational stuff, and I'd like to hear your insight on that as well. So, man, thank you for listening to me ramble, but welcome back, brother.
All right, brother Jeff, glad to be back, man. And yeah, it popped up in the news the other day of these fires out in LA, and I was in that area in July of 2023 in the Pasadena area. Actually, stayed in Arcadia and went down Malibu and some of those places it was at, and while California in that area with Santa Ana winds and the lot of forestry, if you've never been to that area of California, it's lots of hills and woodland and multi-million dollar houses built in that woodland. It was one thing surprised me about that was my first and only time in California. Is I'm not sure why I always envisioned it being flat and stuff, but when I got there, you heard the Bob Seger song Hollywood Hills. That's exactly what it is. It's we went up to Simi Valley to the Reagan Museum and then come back through Malibu and Pepperdine University and down Pacific Coast Highway and all, and it's nothing but hills. Even on the coast is hills. But anyway, that's where the fires are at, and while California is accustomed to that, this one seems to be larger, or I shouldn't say this one because I believe it's tonight. There's like 5 separate fires, and the largest one's like 17,000 acres. And Jeff, can you imagine being in a fire at 17,000 acres? I mean, my former department, we'd get out and we had 2 acres on fire, and you'd think the world was coming to an end. And 17,000 acres. Can you just fathom, how large that is? I'm not sure how many acres or square miles that Roanoke City would be, but I would doubt if the entire city would be 17,000 acres. So it's just like that the whole community being on fire there, and homes being destroyed and lives being taken, and
How
it's
long? How many squares did you say, Billy?
well, just one fire, just the one Pacific Palisades is 17,000 acres. Uh,
So
and
we're
then you got,
saying acres. All right. So
yeah,
let's look up. And hang on here. Keep going. I just want to look up Roanoke City acres so we get it gives us perspective. Um, 14,000 acres of public land.
right. Well,
So
see,
Parks and Recreation Department is nearly responsible for 14,000 acres of public land.
well,
So
just put that in perspective. And that's just one fire. I heard tonight that LA Fire Department has 3,300 uniformed personnel, and they've got everybody that's can be called back. And now they're getting people in from other localities coming in to assist with that. But I think in looking at that, there's going to come some things out, and I hate to keep saying this, Jeff, but the 3 times I've been on the show, it looked like we got back to planning and
yeah, a little
and
bit of
being
planning, a whole lot of
prepared.
leadership.
Right, and you look at that. Just what little bit we know now, and I know last week we talked about New Orleans, and you're seeing some other stuff roll out now, but I think you'll see the same thing in California. Uh, California for years and years and years has had issues with water. Uh, and they still have that, but now they're finding out that those hydrants in that area of the community was were dry. There wasn't any water in them.
So
And
nobody's testing them, right? All right. So let's
well,
let's, let's pause right there. Tell. All right. So you got to remember. This is me. I understand it. But when we talk about that hydrant being dry, there's procedures in place that most fire departments do, and that we just test those on a regular basis. Is that still the case, or
well, absolutely. You know, departments have what's called an ISO rating, Insurance Services Organization rating. And that's most states go by there. Some states have their own independent authority that gives ratings out. North Carolina being one. They have a North Carolina Office of Insurance, which gives their fire department ratings out. Most of your large urban areas in Virginia are an ISO 1, and this is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the least and 1 being as best you can get. You take Roanoke City, for example, they're 1. They met all the criteria that were out there to score 1. Franklin County, where I live, we were a 4. Um, so with that, one of the components where you can pick up points is testing your hydrants. How often you test them, what's the amount of gallons that each hydrant will flow in a certain period of time. And different localities do it different ways. It's not really, I don't think, important of who tested them. It's they're being tested. Uh, in our county, they were tested by the local fire departments. Some localities, the public works department tests them.
right?
So it's different departments, and we try to do ours every 2 years. It's better if you do it every 1 year, but we just didn't have personnel to do it. But most of your urban areas have a division that's like in Virginia world, it could be the Fire Prevention Bureau that would go out and do that type of work, flow that hydrant, see how many gallons a minute that would flow out of that hydrants, and following by the National Fire Protection Association. You'll hear me say NFPA sometimes, the National Fire Protection Association. Those hydrants, if you look at them from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, they're painted certain colors.
Right.
And that color, a fire department can pull up and tell you how many gallons a minute that hydrant's going to flow before they even hook to it. So you know that's all done by somebody in your jurisdiction. Well, you know, where was the disconnect there in that area of California? Was it not being done? Was it not being done correctly? Was there some failure in the piping system? It went, the water was supposed to be there, but was there? You know, I don't know,
Yeah.
and I don't think nobody knows at this time. But you know, there's very few ways to put out a fire. You know, you got to have a couple things to make a fire burn. One is you got to have oxygen. You know, you've got to have some kind of heat source there, something to combust it. And you've got to have some type of fuel. And if you pull one of those out, the fire's going to go out.
Right.
So, you know, when we don't have the water there, well, that don't leave us a lot of options on getting this fire out, because we really can't pull the oxygen out. So that leaves us the fuel. And the fuel, you know, in that instance has to burn out. Now we'll segue into another one, and I'll give kudos here to the Virginia Department of Forestry. In Virginia, the Virginia Department of Forestry has a program called Firewise. And what Firewise is, there's a community here in Franklin County. It's called Windy Gap Village. It's on the Franklin County, Roanoke County line. And that community is what's known as a Firewise community. And they have worked with the county administration and authorities here with fire and EMS in Franklin County, and also with the Department of Forestry and with the Development Building Department to make their areas safe as it can be made. And just a couple examples of that, they move vegetation away from the house. They move vegetation away from the property lines. And basically when you move that vegetation away, what are you doing? Well, you're pulling away the fuel. You know, that's why with forestry departments, when you hear them bulldozing a line around it or raking a line around it, they're moving all the fuel down to dirt. Well, dirt's not going to burn.
Right.
So if you're taking the debris away, a lot of your forestry, Department of Forestry or the Federal Department of Forestry, they'll do what's called controlled burns or prescribed burns.
Yep.
Where they'll go into an area every couple of years and they will set the vegetation on fire.
All right, I want to pause you. I want to interrupt you to continue this on because here's what I wanted. It's a great place for me to ask another question because your the hydrant thing is spot on. Don't know what's going on there, but the other thing I had read was that like the prescribed fire and the burning stuff, they opted not to do that, or they had not done that in a while, or something like that. Can you really just keep going? But I wanted to put that in there, like that is something that I had read that was a contributing factor, kindly to where we are. But now, folks that you know or you see this, Billy, explain to us why that's important and why we do that, or why public safety and the forestry departments do that.
Well, I can name you a couple points there, Jeff, on why that's done. So again, I'm speaking from where I'm located. So let's take the town of Rocky Mount, for example, 23 miles south of Rocky Mount, predominantly a bedroom community for Roanoke and Greensboro. But we've got a preserve here in the town. It's called the Grassy Hill Preserve. It's owned and managed by the Department of Interior. Uh, every so often, I think it's about 3 to 5 years, the forestry department will come in and do what's called a prescribed burn on that mountain. And they'll notify the local authorities here in Franklin County and Rocky Mount that we're going to be there, next Tuesday or whatever it is to do a prescribed burn. And they will go in that area and they will set it on fire. And but it's controlled. They take rakes and bulldozers and every other equipment in there and cut fire lines around it, and they burn it. And that does a couple things. One is, from mine and your world, it removes old, dead debris and vegetation in there that, again, is fuel for the fires. And not only does that cut down on your fire, but that encourages new growth in the area. It enriches the flora and fauna there. It enriches the soil, and it helps to make the growth in that area more robust. In addition to removing dead debris in there, so I can't answer why that hadn't been done in
Yeah.
California. And again, the same theory goes to this Firewise community. And if you have anybody that's watching that's interested, just go to Virginia Department of Forestry and put in Firewise, and it comes up and tells you how to get your community certified as a Firewise community. And the benefit to those couple benefits to the homeowners and their business owners in that area is that not only does it protect your property in the event of a fire, but it also allows for some insurance companies will give you a break on your insurance if you're a certified Firewise community. So I think that's another issue with what's going on in California, the lack of water.
I was
The
looking at it here, Billy, and it talks about this. Just some comment, like some makes sense. Like it's hard to do those burns because of just proximity to urban areas, and then how strict the air quality regulations are in California as well. And then drop in liability concerns. Those are kind of the popular. Just a quick look on why maybe that didn't happen too. So some things make sense there. You think. Maybe that's maybe those are some significant factors, but you would think that and this is kind of what I want to ask you as well, from a preparation standpoint. You California is known for Hollywood, great weather, and forest fires. This is something that happens on a regular basis. So planning and the pre-planning side of this, and what does that look like, or give us some insight on that.
Well, I think it, and thank you for the comments on the reason they couldn't. But I guess it's one of those where you got to weigh the two evils.
Yeah.
Can we do some of the prescribed burns now, or do we wait till something catastrophic happens? And
Yeah.
now we've got the smoke, we've got the
Yep.
city proximity didn't change, but now we've got loss of life and loss of property in
In
there.
that
So
area, it sounds like if we don't do something to control it, it's going to control us, which is
right,
where we are right now. Yeah, like
nature will fix itself.
yeah, nature.
It'll
Yeah,
turn
this
around.
we're exactly
So,
where you guys, where they were avoiding. We ultimately ended up here in a very very negative way versus controlling, controlling our own outcome. There, it seems like. Yeah.
And you're right there, Jeff. And there's probably some other ways that they could have used to mitigate it, but preparation. Benjamin Franklin said, fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
So, and looking back, the budget of the Los Angeles Fire Department was cut over a third just in the last year.
Saw
You're
that.
looking at the second biggest city in the United States, second only to New York. Uh, and they have 3,300 firefighters in LA. I think, and you'd have to Google this, but I think New York City has something like 15,000. So you think 3,300 in a city of I believe it's like 3.3 million in LA. And you take the city of Roanoke is right at 100,000. I think Roanoke has about 250 firefighters or something to that extent. So you can do the math, figure the ratios out. 3,300 is not a lot of firefighters there.
Yeah.
It's so they were cutting the fire department budgets. Were they strengthening?
17, they reduced it approximately 17.6 million, decreasing from 837 million to 819 million.
But still cutting that
Yeah.
budget when
Oh yeah.
you just said a while ago that Hollywood, LA was known for glamour and glitz and forest fires.
Yeah.
If you really want to dig into that, and I think the people that are listening here that's a first responder into emergency management, into fire and EMS, have all heard of the NIMS, National Incident Management System, or the Instant Command System, or the Instant Management System, whatever your authority may call it. That came from California. That came from Cal Fire. Cal Fire, and here's a question for Jeopardy, Jeff, if you ever on there. There's only one federal fire department, and that's Cal Fire.
Cal Fire.
Cal Fire is a fire division that's managed, owned, operated by the federal government, but they're only in California. So that tells you the extent of forest fires they have. They have their own federal fire department there. It is Cal Fire, and that's where the instant command system came from.
Yeah.
That we all use. It came from the Department of Forestry and Cal Fire doing fires.
Yep.
And I used to kind of joke a little bit when I would go to these instant management classes, and there's all kind of forms you had to fill out and to get your resources, and we'd all kind of laugh and joke and go, well, time we got this form filled out, we got the fire out and be back home in bed. But these guys, like I said, we had a 2-acre fire and we just went crazy. Now you think about one fire that's 17,000 acres, and I want the audience to pause a minute and think about that. You've got 5 fires.
Yeah.
One of them is 17,000 acres, but those 1,500 calls that department runs a day are still happening.
Still happening. Yeah.
You still got the fire alarm going off down at the convenience store. You still got, the elderly person falling at the nursing home. You still got the person having a heart attack. You still got the shooting. All those 1,500 calls didn't stop because of your fire. So you've got all those 1,500 calls a day that's going out that are expected to be answered, plus these 5 fires, one that's 17,000 acres. So just pause a minute and think about that. Do they have efficient staff to mitigate the issue? Do they have efficient apparatus? Equipment's one thing, but you got to put personnel on that equipment.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a strenuous
So
work?
Billy, that takes us to a point. I'm going to interrupt you. I want to interrupt you when you
Okay,
talk.
that's your show.
No, you talked about apparatus, and I tagged you in this because it caught my eye. But I want to explain it like you and I were earlier. Was when you talk about apparatus, there's a video floating around of firemen, firefighters. It looked like all dudes, though, just for the record. But firefighters were coming off a truck and they were filling up bags, and like you said, it looked like they were women's purses. And they were going and dousing those bags of water on the fire and just doing their best. But they're basically what it led me to believe there's no hose on the truck. What kind of case, or what did we come to the conclusion that we felt like that was? Just so that'll be our kind of take on that.
Well, when you sent me that, the first thing that I thought about was, oh my gosh, I've lived in this world before. Not to that extent, but I have been the chief of a department that would have reserved our apparatuses but we were not fortunate enough to have the budget to keep those reserve apparatus NFPA equipped. So what would happen, excuse me, what would happen is if we had a fire engine break down and we had to take out a service and we had to pull a reserve in, we would take the equipment off that reserve or off that engine that had broke down and put on the reserve. So the reserve never had any equipment on it. It was just
Right.
a truck sitting there that could haul, 1,000 gallons of water or whatever that had a pump. You still had to put the equipment on it. So I can see, so here's the way I envision that happening. I cannot envision the LA Fire Department going into a station and getting in a truck and driving down the road to that fire, expecting to pull hose off of that truck. I don't envision that. What I envision is that they knew that truck didn't have an equipment on it. But again, it goes back to our first topic that we talked about is water. They knew that truck did have water on it. Or maybe they put water on it. Maybe they filled it up at the station, put water on it. And they figured, well, again, it takes water to put out the fire. That's one valuable component in fighting fires. So at least we can get water there. Now, I can't rationalize yet how they plan on getting the water off the truck. I think if it would have been me, and again, I'm not trying to second guess and armchair quarterback here, but I think if I'd have been doing that instead of filling up a bucket or a lady's purse that looks like they was throwing over the fence, I'd have took the truck to somewhere the fire was below me, and I'd have just dumped the whole load down a hill or something, trying to
That's
get
what
it
I
out.
was wondering if I wonder if it wasn't waiting to switch out. You know how they'll stack them
Yeah,
sometimes, or they're offloading into the what's that big water pond we used to build? What's that thing called?
it's just
Holding tanks.
shoot. You said that
Miss
tank. It's a water dump tank.
dump tank, yeah. Like
Yeah.
they may have been waiting on. We got to see them, taking action, and which is always good. You never want to be caught in the middle of something like that, standing around doing nothing, right? So, that may have been. I wanted to put that in there because it looked like some other trucks that was in there and stuff. So they may have been waiting to offload their load, but like it's
Or they
into
could have
that
been
dump
waiting
tank.
to hook up to another truck
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
then pump it
That could
out.
have
I
been
don't,
pumping. Yeah,
we all know how the media is. You just
yeah.
see a little snippet that sells, but again, I don't want folks second guessing them because I think in their mind they were getting water to the fire. I think a good analogy we can utilize now is that here in Virginia, and especially our area of Virginia, we've got a lot of people without power due to ice storms,
Yep.
and a lot of people are up in arms about, well, they see 100 trucks sitting in a Lowe's parking lot. Why ain't nobody working? Well, they are working, but they can't work 24 hours a day. There may be 100 trucks sitting in a parking lot, but there's probably 200 out working. Maybe
Yeah.
those guys are off shift or whatever. And you've got to empathize with those folks and understand, what's going on. And unfortunately, what we see a lot going on in fire and EMS, and I think other service is the same way. Uh, Me and my wife was looking at some comments on Facebook about some emergency management stuff the other day, and you know, 99% of the people that comment on Facebook have no idea what I'll just say it, Jeff, what they're talking about in relation to that world. Theodore Roosevelt, I believe it was, said, before you can start criticizing, you've got to live in the arena. You've
Yeah.
got to have been there, and you and I both have been there. So I think we can speak a little bit more freely, but and I don't think it's being
Well, Billy, I think this is why I like me and you talking because I want to educate them, right? Because it is. I think it comes from that beneficial arm of, it's easy to sit back and just judge right off the bat. Like this is my feelings. This is how that I would address this. But when we're able to sit down and say, all right, like this is kind of what the inside of that looks like. This is why they're making decisions that they're making. These are some things that they really need to go evaluate at, just from our experience, right? I think us doing this as an educator for those folks is super valuable as well. So that's kind of my goal was, I enjoy, I enjoy not rushing to judgment, right? I think just you got to wait for all the facts to come in and just let everything kind of play out. And but for our experiences, we've also evolved with the scene, and we've watched the evidence show up or this show up, all the things, and then but we also can, and you of all people can explain why that something is being done and why they take the actions the way they do. I got some really good feedback on our Asheville episode about the donations, right? And everybody's pissed off because, why don't they take my donations? And you're like, what would y'all do if I showed up with, tractor trailer full load of stuff and wanted y'all to take it? Like it's hard to just take it without the proper channels, and if you don't, it ends up in a landfill. People didn't know that, but
Yeah.
thanks to your and our conversation about just trying to educate and talk about some of our larger national incidents that has a lot of attention on it. I think I think you did good with that, man. Did good with the last one too when we talked about New Orleans.
Well, good deal. And I appreciate that. And I enjoy the education component too, also. And I hate to be critical of other departments' operational
Yeah,
plans. But with that being said, there's some things that you know, you've as emergency managers and first responders, law enforcement, you always got to be prepared for things. You as a law enforcement officer, we can't be Barney Fife and go out with one bullet or no bullets. We've
yeah,
got to have bullets. Hopefully, we never have to use them, but we've got to have them. If we go out without them, then that's a problem. If we go out
yeah.
without our handcuffs, that's a problem. Same thing with the fire. If we go out without our air pack, or we go out without hose on a truck, that's some things that there was a disconnect there somewhere. And the same thing is with the hydrants. I want to say, did those hydrants ever have water on them?
I
Maybe they were
know.
put there to give somebody a warm, fuzzy feeling when the developer was building those neighborhoods and put them in. And had they ever been tested? We don't know. I mean,
When when you came in, and I lost it. That's what I was listening to. As the public works lady was explaining why that they were out. Basically, I'd gotten to that part, but basically, it sounds like overwhelming the system. That they're like, hey, we're just not. It just what we weren't. We don't have the infrastructure to manage this kind of volume and the stress on our system. Um, which I think they knew that, right? I mean, that's the stuff that I look at and I see is like water is and when I'm in California, I've never had any water issues or there's never been any, but electricity's always been like, you need to conserve. Um, and I remember being out there a couple falls ago. I was in San Diego, I think, and um, there was some threat of stress on the electrical grid that would cause a an issue on one of the lines that would spark a forest fire. Right, so it's like these trifecta or quadfecta of things that was could potentially happen. So that's what I'm saying. Like it's kind of like that's something. It seems like that they would have anticipated more, Billy.
well, you would think so. But you said one thing was that, and I thought you was going one way, and you did a U-turn on me there.
Take me where you want to go.
No, well, I was just thinking when you said you was talking to the public works, it was going to be a thing where that they just didn't have the resources to test the hydrants every year or every
So
two years.
I can't say that you're not wrong there, but um, and it could be the case. I clicked off of it. Let me see if I can find it again while we're talking about it.
Well,
Uh,
I'll give you an example of stuff like that in the Virginia world. You know, on TV, every department and every city and every county has a fire marshal that goes out and inspects everything and okays and everything. But there are many counties in Virginia that do not have fire marshals. They're not required to have fire marshals. The state of Virginia uh, acts as the fire marshal of those counties. We have several around here. Patrick County does not have a fire marshal. Floyd County does not have a fire marshal. But if there's a fire marshal issue, the state fire marshal for this area, which is based over in Roanoke, would go out. But with one fire marshal in numerous counties, we all know they're being reactive and not proactive. We like to say in Franklin County that Franklin County has two and a half, I like to say 2.5 fire marshals. They have two full time and one part time. that go out and try to inspect businesses uh, and mitigate issues and make recommendations to make them safe. But we don't have the resources to do that all the time. And that's what I was thinking that you were going with, that is that maybe they didn't have the manpower secondary to those budget cuts that were
Yeah.
made earlier. Somewhere you had to
That's a
make the
bit,
budget.
yeah, yeah.
So, if I'm the chief there and I can say, all right, well, I've got people that can test the water systems, and I've got people that take the fire truck out to put water on the fire. Well, I've got to make one of these cuts here. So where is it going to be at? Maybe I want to cut those inspectors or whatever the terminologies they use to call the titles, and hope the fire didn't occur in that neighborhood. Because if I cut the fire, it's only going to affect that one neighborhood. But if I cut the trucks going out, that's going to affect a lot of neighborhoods. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think in their world and balance how I would have done it as a leader of the department there. So I think the takeaway is there is a lot of things to look at, and folks have got to sit back and take a real look at that, and there'll be after action reports that come out. And
All right,
I,
hang on a sec. Hang on a second. Ready?
yes, sir.
All right, hang on. I think I'm gonna mute you. Hang on a second, so I don't backfeed you. I gotta mute myself. Hang on a second here. So, hang on, Bill. All right. So that gives you an idea of just. It sounds like it was overwhelmed. But based on that was the Janice Quinones. The That's the lead Department of Water and Power CEO or whatever that title is out there. She's CEO is what it says. Department of Water and Power. Um, it just sounds like overwhelm on the system.
And that very well could have happened. You know, each locality has an amount of water they can put out, and I think here, and I'll again speak for Franklin County. I think the Rocky Mountain water system here, if I'm not mistaken, can put out 1 million gallons a day. Well, if you're pumping over 1 million gallons a day, there ain't no more water coming.
Yeah.
So it's just it's it's a lot of what ifs in there, um, and hopefully they will learn something. It's sad that it had to happen, but if we can use it as an educational experience and a learning experience, and go from there, it will certainly benefit. It's a hard lesson to learn by by doing that. But I do think there were some mistakes made, and again, uh, I'm sure that calls me and you have run at, we've seen instances where there were
Oh,
mistakes there.
yeah, learn from them, right? I mean, it's just that's why we're able to have this conversation. Fortunately, fortunately, we're still here to talk about it. Wasn't none of the mistakes ever were things that went on or situations we got into, whether it was no effort of ours or not. It's something bad blew up or happened, or somebody started shooting, and I'm just fortunate enough that we get to be here and hopefully be part of the solution.
Well, it's like and you'll be the only one who'll get this quote that I'm getting ready to make. But you and I are working on another program, and we will know that you got to be prepared when the circus comes to town.
Yeah,
That you've got to do what you can and write your plans and rewrite them. And we talked about the plan and P last week. You've got to plan because it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. Especially when your area of the country is widely known for large woods and forest fires. That's what you're known for. And if this same fire was occurring in Chicago, it might be a little bit different. We could give them a little break because that's not the area of the country that's known for that. But, if we went to the Midwest, we would hope they'll be prepared for tornadoes and stuff
yeah.
to come through that area, and Florida be prepared for, hurricanes and stuff. So I would have hoped that California would have been a little bit more prepared for that, especially that area of Southern California. California has two dynamic climates there. You got Northern California and you got Southern California, and the climates and the incidents of catastrophic disasters happening is different depending on what part of California you're in. But
Yeah.
this is not something they hadn't seen before, and it's something they'll see again. Uh, but we just got to be better prepared
So
when
here's the other thing
that happens.
here's the other thing I want you to explain to me because this one I just like somewhere along the lines it just seems like as a homeowner. Um, I had read where last year whatever insurance company said we're not going to no longer insure you and they cut policies. Um, and I was doing some more research on that, and I ran across the guy who was like, "Yeah, I had a property in Virginia Beach one time." He's like, "The Lords of London was the only place I could find that would insure that." When you look at just how insurance and that works, is that like on the road, we got to have car insurance, right? It's a state mandated, all those things, but I don't. There's no law that says I got to have homeowners insurance or fire insurance, or the bank says I do because I have a mortgage, but and I have to have proof that I do that, but there's no law and so the regulatory. I guess where I'm rambling here is all of the insurance stuff is regulated by the state. It just seems like that's it seems like there's some huge disconnect between the state that says, in this populous area that's like, yeah, you can't get insurance. I don't. It just seems like there would be something there to help bridge that to where it's like we have these people live here. They should have insurance. I don't get that.
Well, I'm not sure I can answer that, but we'll say something here because I try not to be at a loss for words. But
But you get, like, think about it. You've told me before, like the insurance ratings, right? Is that I assume like some of that stuff plays into how much one pays for their fire insurance based on the rating that your department might have and things along those lines, right?
absolutely, and I can reflect back again. I reflect back to Franklin County. Uh, if you live outside of 5 miles of a fire department and you're more than 1,500 feet from a water source, then you get an ISO of 10. Well, a lot of insurance companies will not write you insurance. I have answered numerous calls when I was employed by the county here. Uh, the insurance company either found out or didn't know or found out later that your ISO was 10 and they would cancel your insurance. And these people would call our office and want to know why my insurance get canceled. Well, I can't tell you why your insurance got canceled, but I can tell you it's probably because you had an ISO of 10 and
Yeah.
they're not going to write you. And you're right. There's no law in Virginia that says you got to have insurance. Now, again, if you've got a mortgage, the bank requires you to have insurance. but not the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I think it maybe a lot of those people did not have insurance or will not have insurance. And also on the same token, there I heard one of the local TV stations report. Well, it was one of the national TV stations reporting that some insurance companies may go bankrupt over this because they're not going to have enough money to pay it. You're talking
Yeah.
billions of dollars. And I know the same thing happened several years ago with one of the hurricanes down in the Florida area and the Gulf Coast. And I don't remember which one it was, but there was a while there. And I want to say maybe it was Erie that would not write homeowner policies in that area of the country anymore because the risk was just so great. So it may come that, all right, and I'll just pick on my home. I have Erie insurance in my home, and it may be that Erie may say, all right, we're not going to insure no more houses in California. So you have to go out there and look for another insurance. And then the problem there is that it's going to be so expensive that the average middle class individual will not be able to afford it.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so,
like I said, in the state, there's no regulation because
there's
that'll come up because there would be an assumption because if you think like, well, it seems like the government should make them or it's the
Mhm.
government should back this insurance or whatever, right? So that just doesn't exist. It's not the way it works.
You're right, and again, it goes back to we talked about the hurricanes in North Carolina a month or so ago, and it goes back to then a little bit that the individual has some responsibility also. I mean, if you were going to build in that area, uh, excuse me, Jeff, if you want to build in that area, it would have probably been to your advantage to maybe put your own water source in, and maybe have something like a cistern and have your own residential sprinkler system put in. Would it have been a benefit to put a fire break around your house? Maybe that you had concrete around your house, out 6 feet or so to break. And I'm sure a fire of this magnitude would have
Yeah.
breached all that. But in your average everyday fire, that may have been the saving grace that that helped you there. And I think again, when you choose to build in those high incidence areas, that is an assumed risk that you take. Uh, if I'm going to build a $10 million house in the suburbs of Rocky Mount, I probably assume the risk that it's going to take a fire department 30 minutes to get there. And I assumed that risk when I built that home. And I think the same thing would be out there is, that there was some risk of when you put that house there and you had the beautiful view of the Pacific and all that great stuff. You also had that was the good part. The bad part is we're risking being here, and you had to weigh that, I guess, the return on the investment there
Yeah.
as to whether you wanted to do that. Uh, so
I
I
just
think
see
that
where this just happened, Billy. I'm just watching, kind of see if anybody comments or what have you. But I was just watching here, and there was an accidental emergency alert went out countywide in Los Angeles to evacuate, um, and then they sent a disregard, and that was just supposed to be for one specific area. So when you look at I teach when I'm teaching kids athletics, right? Minimize your mistakes. If you wanna win the game, we just have to make one less mistake than the other team does. And when you look at where these guys are now, is it looks like the masking tape that was holding this very high regarded agency. It seems like it's starting to peel back. When they get into the communication. So there's a lot of, just a lot of internal, because public wants answers, right? Why did this happen? So they're going to be looking for that. But, in your leadership and where you are, Billy, what's your, when if you're sitting in the seat right now, it's getting warmer.
it's not. It's already really hot.
It's
Uh,
hot.
and I think right now we've just got to keep looking forward and not look back. Right now, we've
Yeah.
got to the number one priority right now is to save lives, protect property, and get this fire put out. and then we'll go back and sit around the table and figure out what happened. And I'm sure that we're going to find some things that went wrong. But I'd also like to say along the same line, Jeff, is that uh, none of this stuff comes free. Uh, and when you want that level of service, or you want that level of protection, you've got to be willing to pay for that level of protection. Uh, I'll go back and talk a little bit more about that. Is if you want, a fire truck on every corner that's staffed and can get out the door in 30 seconds with qualified firefighters, that comes with a cost. You've
Yeah.
got to, and that cost in public, in governmental municipal work is taxes. So it's how much are you willing to pay for that, and what is the priorities uh, that that are important to you. And in my previous position, I used to always preach that the priorities in government are driven by the citizens' expectations. If Jeff Robertson, is in Roanoke City, and to him, you know, athletic fields are very important, then Jeff Robertson is willing to pay the price to have those athletic fields there. Uh, but if Billy Ferguson lives in Roanoke City, his priority may be having a class one fire department with fire departments on every corner. And I really don't care whether they got athletic fields or not. So I don't want to,
Yeah.
if I want to cut, I want to cut the athletic fields. Jeff Robertson wants to cut, you know, city garbage or whatever it may be. So it's what is the most part of your citizenry want. And that's the balancing act. I remember here in Franklin County a couple of years ago, was last year, we closed 2 elementary schools. Well, citizens were up in arms about that, and rightfully so in some aspects. But the same token, you had the same folks complaining that the taxes were too high and you need to lower taxes. Well, you can't have it both ways. You know, having more schools is easy. You just pay more taxes. If you want less schools and cut taxes, well, we cut services. I think that's one of the things that California may have had is what was important to their citizens. Maybe building a new football stadium for the 49ers was where everybody wanted the money to go. Not picking
Yeah.
on the 49ers,
Well,
but there's only so much money out there to go. Maybe it was increasing park opportunities. So the money, we didn't want to raise taxes, so we had to cut. So maybe that's where that 17 million got cut, because you can bet they didn't cut that 17 million from fire department and return it to the citizens of Los Angeles. That
no, I looked it up. I was waiting for you to. I was waiting for us to circle back here, so because I
yeah,
was curious. Um, 17 million out of this is from ChatGPT, who pulled it from Fox Los Angeles. So just where the information's coming from. So it's it's not ghosting the response, but that's who's looking it up for me. Um, Significant funds were directed toward homelessness. Um, that was a huge increase. And then the police department, their
yeah,
budget was increased to support recruitment and retention. I got a couple other facts I wanted to tell you there. So you got homelessness in the police department for retention and recruitment, and just to bolster public safety concerns, right? Same um, similar mission, right? So it's crazy that they're fighting each other. Then I kind of ask it like, what did it affect when the money? So here's what the impacts were. Overtime, 7 million was cut out of the fire department's overtime budget. Um, it didn't, despite the budget cuts, they maintained its recruitment efforts and planned and trained, hired over 220 new firefighters across 3 academy classes. But they did eliminate certain vacant administrative positions, which is just a broader strategy to address the financial challenges of the city. And then it goes on to just kind of note that the fire chief had just been vocal about the budget reductions and overtime, and how it was going to impair their ability to manage um, where they're at now. Probably just the response and being able to pay their people. But once I guess what would happen, Billy, is the governor's going to declare, state of emergency, or the county's going to do an emergency declaration. Hopefully, the government or state or somebody's going to step in to help offset the budget shortfall for the salaries.
Well, I don't know. Typically, when you declare a state of emergency, and the president gives you a declaration of disaster, that only, if it's approved, you only get money for salaries based on the overtime rates. It doesn't pay your normal rates. So if you were scheduled to work 40 hours that week or whatever your schedule would be, I know when I worked in that department, it was 216 hours was our
Yeah.
pay period. So for 216 hours, the government was going to reimburse anything, but I did have to stand to get some money back for my overtime incurred. But there's lots of caveats to that. It's intense record keeping. It only pays for the response to those incidents. So if you still got those 1,500 daytime calls we were talking about, they're not going to pay to respond to that. That's all yours. So they'd only pay for overtime for this particular incident that you went to. And a lot of people don't understand there. It's like we talked about insurance a while ago. If you got insurance on your structure, you're not getting anything. That's up to the insurance company to pay for that. And if you didn't have insurance, there's potential you may get something. But no way, no how does that money even come close to offsetting the cost. And I'll give you an example here in Franklin County. The last declared disaster we received any federal money back for was with Hurricanes Florence and Michael. Uh, and you see, have a threshold, and our threshold here in Franklin County was $300,000. So we had to spend $300,000 to be even eligible to get money back. Well, we got $36,000 back. So 300,000 spent versus 36,000 back, better than nothing, but not a whole lot. So you don't really want to carry that around in your back pocket to rely on. Well, if this happens, we can get a declaration and get some money back. It doesn't always happen that way. And that per capita is based, that money gets based on per capita. In Franklin County, it was $1.86 per individual there. So that, and I think going back to what you said earlier on cutting personnel, a lot of that also has to do with it sounds like what you were saying is they were able to keep the academy, and they were able to recruit, and they were able to keep the street firefighters there. But what about, the prevention bureau? What about the
Yeah.
investigation bureau? The stuff that, we look at.
Could have been your admin positions that left, right?
It could have been your admin positions that left, but it also could have been. Let me give you a little example here. So a couple of years ago, when I was still employed as the fire chief here in our county, uh, I I had come to realize that this particular budget year, I wasn't going to get any additional paid staffing for my department. So what I did was I went out to staffing for my prevention and investigation bureau because I'm thinking, well, that the way I framed that to sell to the board of supervisors was that, okay, we understand we can't get any firefighters, but how can we reduce fire or put out fire with the same number of firefighters, but yet our population's increasing? Well, let's work on the other side and prevent the fires.
Yeah.
So I was able to get a couple of those fire marshal positions in that way. Uh, Sometimes you have to look at it that way, where we can't get people to put out the fires, let's get people to prevent the fires. Uh,
The real
so look
quick
at
here,
that.
Billy. This is something I think is pretty relevant. 7 million cut from the overtime budget. We talked about that. Affecting essential activities such as pilot training and the operation of firefighting helicopters.
And what are they using now to put out the fires? Helicopters. And LA County, I forget what it is. I think they have. I want to say that LA County alone has 17 helicopters. And
Yeah.
LA City has 7, I believe it is. So a rather robust fire department. So cutting that down, but again, it goes back to Jeff. Again, it goes back to water. Um, there's not a lot of water in LA County.
Yeah.
Um,
They're
you know,
drafting out of the Pacific and dumping it. I read that where they
yeah.
were they're
Well,
pulling.
the problem with that is I seen something on Twitter or Facebook today. It was talking about, well, a lot of this fire is burning down the Pacific Coast Highway, which is literally 100 yards from the Pacific Ocean. But you can't take an average fire truck and pull water out of the
Right.
Pacific Ocean because of the salination that's in the water. It's going to ruin the truck, ruin the pumps, and you just can't do it. Now, the fire boats could do it because they're designed to do that. But a lot of that stuff is, again, it goes back to the uneducated
Yeah.
person that doesn't live in mine in your world that will think, well, my God, all that water there, it's why do you thirst to death when you're in the ocean? Because you
Yeah.
can't drink the water.
Can't drink water.
Um, so again, I think there's other ways it's to mitigate that. But I guess if we loop all the way back to where we started tonight at, that we've got to have some real deep dive discussion on uh, planning and priorities and what we can do to prevent this from happening again. And it will happen again.
Yeah.
But hopefully the next time we'll be better prepared for it. It's just like, I know my department's going to have an accident this week, or they're going to have a structure fire this week. And, I could judge myself, why do we have 33,000 people without electricity this week? Why did we come in and cut the trees around the power lines? It's just,
Right.
you just wait there. I hope that's answered has been I don't want to say answered all our questions because it hasn't, but that it's gets insight to our folks, our audience tonight, and people that will be viewing this in the future. And I think you find these helpful, and I think you and I are looking at doing these about every
Yeah.
other week or
Yeah.
twice
We
a
try to
month.
do this every other week when we've it might end up being a little spinoff of we just do our own podcast outside of my second chance stuff,
Yeah,
just to streamline mine and your efforts and mission. And like I said earlier, you're retired. I am out of that game, but just too many years of knowledge not to be able to sit down and have a conversation to use not only to keep ourselves kind of sharp on things, but because we're passionate about it, but just kind of educate, right? Just let we used to, listen, man, we grew up in a time when you listen to the radio scanner, you just tell her the police scanner, you was buried to the police scanner. Now, you might not know all the 10 codes, but you can go get you a sheet and then you can figure out what the cops are talking about, right? That's just kind of, that's how long it goes. But then if what I learned was, and even as I got older, is if, uh, if we didn't try to help tell them or explain things, they'd make it up and they try to figure it out on their own of what's going on. And just our ability to be able to just try to explain different situations and give our perspective on it, I think is what we're shooting for. So
well, absolutely, and we're not being critical of anybody. It's just trying to, and we're not second guessing anybody. We're just trying to say, hey, from from us being subject matter experts, we're saying, hey, here's something we'd have done differently based on the facts that we have. Now, do we have all the facts? Probably not. But you made a good point there of if you don't know something, somebody's going to make it up.
yeah,
And I talk about all the time in media relations that you need to be prepared to interact with the media, because if you don't, Bubba down at the Exxon station is going to interact with the
yeah,
media.
he's gonna take
And,
care
and
of
there's
you.
a story that's going out there, and that's what's going to become the gospel when it goes out there. So we want to get that out there. We're trying to educate folks to understand that, because unless you have lived in the arena, you don't know some of the things that go on there. Some of that stuff is not as easy as you think about.
Yeah. Um, I think you got that, Billy. And then, we're also in a time where I'm probably a bit of like we continue to approach and we have to we lower our expectations. We're paying a lot, but a lot of times we're lowering our expectations as well, and we're getting complacent. And I think a little bit of things I like to do is let people know, like, this is what can go on in your community. Don't think that it's that everything. Make sure you ask. Make sure you check in on it. Don't take your, like you said, we would have thought that they had a plan or this, for this scale or whatever, because it happens all the time. But just in a regular response or whatever, and this is probably one of those where it's once in our lifetime, hopefully once in a couple hundred years, to where it's going to and really impact this city and get the negative attention that it is. That ultimately will always be positive, but we can't. I also think that we have to remember that we have to have expectations of and we can't get complacent, and we have to know that things can happen, and us just saying, oh yeah, no, that happens, that happens over there, we don't have to deal with that. But we have our own issues in our area that we work with and we pre-plan with. And um I think that's something that I see too sometimes is everybody wants that job, or everybody wants to be in that role or whatever, until it comes time to do the job.
Mhm.
And just making sure that we're always operational ready at a very high level. That you're um, I've absolutely seen things unfold, and get to stand and hold the bag of crap, because I didn't have myself ready. I wasn't mentally ready, or I wasn't. Um, even back then, is just physically ready, right? It's just taking better care of myself. So I think there's a little bit of that too, to just make sure that we remind everyone, whether you're in public safety, whether you're in public, whatever, just always kind of try to be in a state of operational ready too. I think there's a big deal there.
Well, everybody wants to play your position until they find out the hard work it takes to play it, and
Yeah,
and the like. So yeah, I think that this fire will be one of those things that 2 years from now, you and I will be sitting at a seminar in Chicago with some speaker from LA talking about here's where we dropped the ball at, or here's
yeah,
where we didn't, and then we'll have a lessons learned out of it. But I think we got our finger on the pulse of what goes on in emergency services, and I really
yeah, a little
enjoyed
bit.
talking about that. And hopefully, our folks enjoy the podcast and are getting something out of it. And
Hey man, you got, like I said, as a lead off, man, you got too many years of experience on that. You've been in those leadership roles, and you've been the person that had to make those tough calls, or had to make those hard calls, and you had to be held accountable for when you or your teams fell short for that. And we've all been there.
absolutely,
Um, so that's your, when you get to sit in those chairs and get to be in the roles you have, that comes with a valued opinion, and it's someone that I value, and that's when me and you was talking. I was like, man, we just need to figure out, let's do this. So yeah, and then and um, you we talk about it a lot. We've both seen some unique situations in probably was a very smaller and rural area, or rural-ish. But we've also been exposed to some um, pretty large scale incidents and some high profile things that's going on in our careers. Um, and one that we're going to be unpacking soon. So I'm excited for us to get to that. So we'll be teasing a little more of that as it comes up. And Billy's going to have a really good episode on debriefing one of his higher profile incidents when he was on scene commander. So it's something else that we're getting to, folks. We're going to start kind of pulling into each other's career a little bit and pulling out some of our hot button. Talk to the wife a little bit about, maybe it's like we might need somebody to help interview, just to get some of the things that I might miss or you might miss or whatever. So
right.
I'm putting some other things in there, dude. We always try to keep it at an hour. Do we hit all your talking points?
Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. We'll save something for next time.
That's cool,
Um,
man. So
May want to
listen,
talk
what
about.
did you have positive going, man? We said we was going to talk about something positive. You have anything positive going this week?
Well, we do have some things positive going on. I think people's power in Franklin County is coming back on.
There
It
you
was
go.
high point. It was 13,000 folks without power now. Tonight it was down to about 700. So, if you see your linemen out there working, take them a donut, a cup of coffee, whatever, and thank them for that. And don't blame those guys for your electric bill going up. They don't set the rates. They
Yep.
just fix your power. So, it's the same thing. used to tell people, I don't hire the firefighters and pay their salaries. All I do is make sure they got water that comes out the hose.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
it's the same thing. You got to know who you're holding responsible, what the actions are. But
Kids,
no, I think that
kids went back to school today, right? Kids
no,
went
not in
back to school.
Franklin County. No, they're
Didn't
actually out today and tomorrow.
I'm
Uh,
in the city, so the kids went back. Mine went back 2 hours late today, and then they should get into full day tomorrow. But it's back to snowing in where we are this weekend, so we'll
yeah,
see how
supposed to
that
snow
goes.
here too.
And folks, if you ain't from around, like when we say snow, most time when we say snow, it turns into ice, and
Yeah.
it gets like what we're talking about. It gets heavy on the trees, the power goes out. So everyone else is fun in the snows. Most of the time, us having to do a lot of damage control and just mitigation of issues because it's more ice than it is snow. So
But again, that's why we have the emergency plans for that. We're not going to have the 17,000-acre forest fires. We're going to have the quarter-inch ice that's hanging on power lines and trees that's breaking them down. We're going to have the car accidents. We're going to have the backwoods hunting accidents. We're not going to have 17,000-acre fires. That's what we got to be prepared for. So, again, it goes back to what California is known for. And I
yeah,
know there's plans. I know they had to be. It's just,
yeah.
what happened here. So.
And keep in mind, if you're listening, you need your emergency preparedness plan worked on. You can reach out for Billy. You can connect with me. I'll connect you to Billy if you come through there. Billy can help you get all that stuff and test your systems, test your policies up against some things that you might be exposed to inside of your business as well. Whether it's a local business, whether you're a government agency, folks that's listening in, Billy's. Um, that's what Billy does for a living now. He's here to help you. So,
Yeah, reach
man,
out to Jeff and he'll hook you up. And like I said, whether it's municipal government, public, private industry, we'd be more than happy to talk to you and see how we can help.
I appreciate you being on again. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
You the man. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, man.